Hello and welcome to Caregivers First, a show brought to you by SCAN, the Social Community Activities Network. SCAN is a nonprofit agency dedicated to helping active adults stay informed, empowered, and inspired. I am your host, Lynette Whitman, and I am the Executive Director of Caregiver Volunteers of Central Jersey. As a caregiver for my mother, I know firsthand that this role can sometimes feel like a lonely and difficult journey. Caregivers First was developed to give you knowledge and help you navigate this time in your life. My guests will be experts who will provide you with the latest information and tips to make your life easier. I hope to give you real-life tools and let you know that you're not alone. So I'd like to welcome my first guest today, who is Jim Winn, who is the owner and president of Comfort Keepers, an in-home healthcare program. So Jim, welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thank you. Tell me about Comfort Keepers.
Well, Comfort Keepers, we provide care in the homes of primarily seniors in order to allow them to remain independent. So I've been an owner for about 5 years now, and basically we go in and we help them with their activities of daily living. And that can be from just light housekeeping, to dressing, to showering, and so forth. And we provide care just so they can remain independent in their own home and basically stay out of facilities. Though we do go into assisted living in places like that where they may need assistance.
Great. So I think that when you're a caregiver, at some point in your caregiving journey, you're going to need home health care agency, whether it's your loved one coming home from a hospital or you just needing to get out a little bit, or you're working. It seems like it's inevitable that at some point you're going to need in-home care. So I'm really glad that you're here today to talk about this world. One of the things that I experienced myself with my mother, and that we get calls at all the time, is that the caregiver knows that the person needs a home health care aid. The person doesn't want it. I don't need it. I don't want anybody in the home, and it tends to be a battle that ensues. How do you have tips for caregivers how to do this?
I would say this is a very common issue, and a lot of people think it's unique to them, but it's actually incredibly common. The parent-child, we like to call them, a lot of times they're the ones that are kind of driving the fact that their parents need assistance. And the parents are 80% of the time they're resistant to getting care. So obviously if 80% of the people are resisting getting care and nobody got care, then we wouldn't exist. So it becomes a conversation with the family. Sometimes it's harder for the children to make the parents understand what they may need, and the parents see it as a loss of independence. But the fact is that actually we are allowing them to be more independent in their home, because we're just giving them the help they need on a daily basis, that allows them not to have to go to, say, a nursing home or an assisted living facility or something like that. So, a lot of times we have this conversation, and sometimes it doesn't work the first time we have the conversation. I call it softening the beach, kind of letting the parents know that this may be inevitable. And there's a couple different reasons why people are resistant. One reason is they like to have family members help. So a lot of times, if they have a family member come, that's the way of seeing their kids, because the kids come, they help them out, So we try to kind of paint it as it's not that your kids are not going to stop coming. They're just going to come, and instead of doing your laundry or helping you with things around the house, now you can go and spend what we call quality time, not just doing things for you. So the big thing is we encourage the family to also make sure that they visit frequently. Don't stop coming, because a lot of times you do just come out of necessity, because most people are living very busy lives and things like that. So, that's a scenario that we see often. The other is that people are very suspicious of people coming into their homes. So especially the older generation, so they're kind of, afraid they're going to lose their privacy. So having somebody come into their home, a lot of times they've been retired for 20 years or so, and there's not people coming in and out. So we have to explain to them that the individuals coming in their home go into a lot of homes. They're almost like a doctor examines many patients. It's, your situation isn't embarrassing or anything like that.
Right.
So a lot of times people are just kind of suspicious of it. And as we get older, and me included, I'm resistant to change. So this is a change to have somebody come.
Yeah, those are great points. The other part, as a caregiver for myself, I know that I felt like when somebody came into the house, I was going to be judged, that they were going to be looking at my house and maybe it wasn't spotless, or and so I wonder, if people, even like the older person themselves, they don't want somebody coming in and judging their lives. So that's another part that I felt like as well.
Yeah, so it's important that we let them know that they're the boss.
Yeah.
So this is not, they're not losing control of their environment, that it's, that now they're just, this is somebody that's helping them. So I kid about it. I say it's like having a friend, but a friend that you can boss around. That's the best kind of friend.
That's a great friend. Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the other joke we have, is because I would love to have a caregiver come into my home and fold my laundry, put things away, clean things up, and cook me a meal. It's kind of ironic, as they get older, they don't want it.
Right. Talk about the different levels of care. So I think people are confused about this, that there's companion, but then it also could be hands-on, and then it's medical.
Right.
What's that world like?
I break it down to 3 types of care. So there's companion care, which really is more like assistance with just daily things like cooking and cleaning, and things that are not part of personal care.
So no hands-on.
There's no hands-on.
Okay.
So so this might be taking somebody to the grocery store, or doing laundry, doing light housekeeping, keeping them engaged, maybe coming in and playing a game or something like that. Then your next set of care is really personal care. And then that involves anytime somebody touches you, you have to have a certified home health aide. Though 99% of our aides are certified, just because even dealing with seniors, they do fall and things like that. And once somebody falls, that's considered personal care because you have to handle them. Okay. So anytime you have to touch a senior, which involves bathing, it could be incontinence care, things like that, that would fall under the guidelines of what you call personal care.
Okay.
The third is medical, which would, involve things like ostomy bags and things like that, in private duty nursing, where the care level is a little bit higher.
Okay. All right. And can the aide give medication? I think sometimes this is sort of a gray area that people don't know.
The regulations have changed in New Jersey. So it used to be that you could only do medication reminders. Okay. So where a pill box would have to be filled, and you could say, "This is so and so," and that's 80% of the case, and they take the medication themselves.
Okay.
An aide is allowed to give medication, but it has to be under supervision of our nurse. So we have 2 nurses, and so they have to be deemed competent to do it. So, the nurse has to say, this aide can do this in this circumstance. We don't advise it. A lot of times we'll have a nurse fill pill boxes and things like that, because they're just more skilled at it. But if it's simple type of things and the nurse deems that aide is able to do it, you are able to delegate that task to an aide.
Okay. That's good to know. So if anybody has questions, they should, when they're signing that person up or getting that initial registration, they should ask what the regulations are.
So my nurse, so the initial process, my nurse does a plan of care.
Okay.
So they go over all the medications and things like that. And one of them is how are the medications distributed. So if they say, oh, my daughter fills the pill box, and you would just be handing them. Once it gets to a scenario where they may have multiple medications and things like that, and sometimes we go into a home and there's a lot of confusion on the medications anyway, then it becomes an issue of whether the aide would do it, or if the family member's not around, whether our nurse would do it for them.
Okay. Talk a little bit about, I know that some people go through agencies, some people just have a neighbor, or they heard about a lovely lady that watches people. When somebody's considering this world, what's the factors to think about whether to go through an agency or just to get somebody that you know that's a nice person?
Yeah, so obviously, usually people, when they find somebody they know that's a nice person, so a lot of the elderly, so there's a lot of scenarios with that. A lot of the elderly will say, well, I have a friend come by, and go, well, how's that working out? And, well, they never show up, and they come in and they boss me around, you know, and because you're really doing you a favor, you know. So that's somebody that's just helping you out.
Right.
So that's a different level. And we see people come from that where it starts out.
Right.
That people are helping, and we meet people from the church and things like that. And that's fantastic. But once your level of care starts to go up, the scenarios become a little bit more difficult. So then, you know, sometimes people will hire in the private market. They might hire somebody they heard about, or, you know, look online, you know, and those people generally are, they're not really vetted. So there's some liability issues you have personally with them. Number one, you're paying them under the table, so you know, they're not paying taxes and things like that. So there are cases where people work for people for a long time, and the person that is in your employ may come back for taxes, or if they get hurt in the home. So we have a liability policy as well as workers' comp and things like that. So if somebody's assisting you in the home, and let's say they fall, there's a big misconception that it falls under their that it'll fall under their homeowners policy. It doesn't cover domestic workers, your homeowners policy. So if they're not insured and bonded, you could be on the hook for liability. So the other thing is that we do criminal background checks on people, and so they work for us, and they're our W-2 employees. So we have a history with them, so we know who they are, where they come from, what cases they work for, and things like that. So we do know if something comes up on their criminal record, they would be removed from the house, the business in general. So when you hire a private person, you generally don't have those kind of safeguards. You know, the criminal shows you so much, but also our history with the people that work with us. We know if they're good matches and things like that. So then we get a lot of calls from people where that person just leaves. They might be from another country or something like that, and they just one day just leave, you know, and so then you're kind of, now you're scrambling to find somebody.
Especially if you work. If you're working and then you just have no backup or anything like that, that could really be catastrophic for somebody who just hired somebody. So for an agency then, let's say the aide has to go back to their country, or there's a family emergency, they would call you and say, I can't fulfill this job, and then you would find somebody to back them up.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
we
process.
would have another person. So we have approximately 220 people that work for us. So we would get coverage for that in that scenario. So people get sick, they've got children. There's all sorts of things that come up in people's lives. Yeah, so they don't come to work. So if you have one person, you know, in some scenarios you can live without that person for one day, but in the other scenarios you can't.
Right, and it's not like you could just, you want to put anybody into that home in this sort of situation. It takes time to find somebody and build a rapport and do the background checks and that sort of thing.
Right. So, you know, technically, if they're doing personal care, they should be a certified home health aide. So a lot of times we'll hear, well, she says she's a certified home health aide, but technically in New Jersey, it's actually against the law to work as a certified home health aide without working for an agency.
Okay.
So there's issues with that also.
Right, wonderful. All right, well, we're gonna take a break now. Great information. And we will be right back after the break with my guest, Jim Winn from Comfort Keepers In-Home Care.
You probably already know that rehabilitation is a must for successful recovery from surgery, injury, or serious illness. What you may not know is that you're free to choose where you go for rehab. In Monmouth and Ocean County, the compelling choice is Care One. Where you choose to go for rehab matters, and with Care One, you have 4 convenient locations to choose from in Monmouth and Ocean counties. Care One at Jackson, Care One at Wall, Care One at Homedale, and Care One at King James in the Atlantic Highlands. At Care One, you'll work with a team of experts to develop a plan based on your needs and goals. you'll have the full support of caring, compassionate physicians, RNs, licensed therapists, and nutritionists dedicated to helping you recover successfully without setbacks at a pace that makes you comfortable and successful in meeting your rehabilitation goals. Once you take the first step with us, you'll never look back. Call 877-99-CARE-1 today and come for a tour.
Welcome back to SCAN and Caregivers First. I am your host, Lynette Whitman, Executive Director of Caregiver Volunteers of Central Jersey, and I am having a great conversation with Jim Winn, who is the owner and president of Comfort Keepers in-home care. So Jim, you're giving us great information, and you talked a little bit about the different levels of care that people, there's 3 ways that you break it up. Talk to us a little bit about training that home health care aides get, and before you bring them on to you, how do they need to be trained?
Right, so there's a couple of ways. We have our own training program, which they go through. Some of it is in the office, and then some of it is online. And so they're trained in areas like Alzheimer's and dementia care, lifting techniques, what to do with fall management, HIPAA rules, things like that before they go into the home. So they're trained, we put them through a pretty good training program. Plus in New Jersey they have to be certified home health aides in order to do any kind of personal care. So then also our nurse comes back and she does skills tests with them to make sure they're up to par on all of their skills.
Okay, so there's like ongoing monitoring that takes place.
Yep.
And do the aides ever have a choice of what type of home they want to be put into? Like, let's say they don't particularly feel comfortable or like working with dementia patients. Mm-hmm. Do they have a say in where they're assigned?
Yeah, so we have a system that's online, and we profile them. So for instance, some aides won't go in where they smoke. If you're smokers or if somebody has pets.
Okay.
So there's some people that won't go there, so they don't have to. Some people don't want to do hospice care. Mm-hmm. Anything that there's hospice, it's just too tough for them to deal with. So that's one way that we match people with the home. There's also a personality matching that goes on. So usually, we meet with the people. My nurse meets with them as well as somebody from the office, and we kind of get an idea of the type of person and their personality. Mm-hmm. And then not only do we match it on skills, we'll match it on the personality, because there is a bit of matchmaking that goes on when you put somebody into the home as to whether it will be. Some people like someone that takes more charge, and then some people like someone that more they can boss around.
Right.
So we kind of try to figure out that balance.
Yeah. And if, let's say you match somebody and it's just not working out, like you feel, so do you encourage the family to call you and say, look, Mom keeps complaining about this person, or what?
So what we do is anytime anybody signs up with us, we tell them to solemnly promise that they will call us if there's even the most minor issues.
Okay.
Because this way we can resolve it. It eliminates them trying to supervise the caregiver themselves. Mm-hmm. So I have cases where somebody goes into the home and they say, this person's not going to work. Maybe it's the first or second day. And so we try to get a handle on what the issue might be. And so a lot of times it could be minor changes. Maybe the caregiver didn't quite understand some of the expectations, because it is difficult to go into somebody's home and figure out exactly what they want you to do. Mm-hmm. So we'll work with the caregiver in that case. So again, I've had cases where people told people to leave, and 3 years later we've worked it out, and they love them to death. So it was just a communication issue. But if somebody's not a fit, we'll replace them, no questions asked. We'll get somebody else in there, and that's advantage to working with an agency, is that you don't, the person basically is replaced, and there's no issue as to whether you're firing them or anything like that.
Right.
So.
Right. With my mom, we had an aide in after she got out of the hospital, and lovely woman. We loved her, and we were there all the time, and then we found out later, first the woman was saying to her, I don't have gas money, can you give me gas money today? And then the person said, oh, I love your watch, my daughter's birthday, can I have your watch? And luckily my mother told me this, but we were there all the time and that happened. So I think there's a natural fear that that's going to happen. What do you say to people that don't live close? How do you monitor the situation?
Right. So, we have rules with the people that work for us. So, for instance, taking gifts from clients without informing us, essentially I would consider it theft, because the person might have Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that. You're really taking an advantage. So if you were, say, a child in your situation, we would call you and say, your mother gave us, your jewelry, or gave money to the person, and we would make sure that that's approved.
Right.
Because it does happen, and if somebody is cognitively impaired, that would be taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing with an agency, that we kind of get a handle on that stuff as far as giving things away. And then, of course, it's in their profile that they do give things away, and that they're to be returned, So sometimes they'll even just come back and return it quietly, because the person might insist on it.
Yeah.
So somebody far away, as far as monitoring what goes on with your parents, we have people that live across the country, and that's why they hire us, to make sure that their mom or dad is getting the total care. So we go as far as having our nurse accompany them to doctor's appointments and things like that. So that's a big area where there's a gap. The senior goes to the doctor, they don't really understand what happened. Heck, sometimes I go to the doctor, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
So our nurse will write a report, to the family, and of course, we'll organize all their medications and things like that for them. So if you're far away, there's also technology. We have technology. We have a tablet, which with our live-ins we put in every home, which allows you to actually video conference, with the senior. So we do check-ins with our nurse too.
Wow. So you give that out to all your families? You give a
if somebody's doing
tablet?
20 hours, more than 20 hours, it's free.
Okay.
So it's a tablet which allows people to kind of, just kind of call and things like that, and kind of allow them to kind of be engaged,
Yeah. Well, sometimes we tell families who call us about this, just have a neighbor come in unexpected. Just knock on the door at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock in the morning. Do you ever tell a family to do you encourage
Sure. I mean,
that?
I encourage anybody to stop by any time.
Yeah.
I've had people go, I don't want to stop by my mom's without calling first or whatever. I'm like, no. You should be able to stop in whenever you want.
Right.
I encourage people, if people want to put cameras in the home, if the senior is okay with that, put a camera in the home, or we will even assist you in putting a camera in the home if it's something that's really, But I can tell you that, most of all the cases really go very well, as far as there's, you hear a lot of horror stories out there.
Right.
But there's just mostly wonderful cases out there, and it's very rare that bad things happen. But I think it's always good to have, something that's going to give you peace of mind. And putting a camera in the home will do that. That's great.
Yeah, I'm always struck. Unfortunately, I have to go to a lot of funerals just from being in caregivers and people, pass away. I am always struck by the amount of aides that come to the funerals of people, and they're really family. They really, they love the person so much, and the family loves them so much. And I almost feel like, I don't know if you guys do this or not, but somebody needs to handle their grief or talk about their grief, because it's a loss, but they're not really family. And but it's this gray area where they are family.
Sure.
Do you guys ever talk to your aides about that?
Yeah, so we do.
Yeah.
We tell them, we have lots of discussions with them,
Yeah.
and tell them to come. My door's open if somebody needs to come, because sometimes it's really, really hard. When they lose a case, they get really attached to the person, and they kind of watch, and sometimes it can go on for quite a bit of time.
Oh, yeah.
So it can be emotionally tough. And I've seen people kind of come out of working for us just because they can't handle
Right, they
that
don't want to be
loss.
in another care.
Yeah, so
yeah.
you do see that, and people put us in their obituaries and things like that. We see us written, and
Oh, yeah,
it's really,
really
really
nice.
nice and very rewarding.
Yeah. Can you share a story about a family that really touched your heart, that you knew, okay, I made a difference here, or Comfort Keepers made a difference here?
Yeah, I could probably talk another hour.
Okay,
but
all right. Well.
I'll keep it to one story.
Okay.
We had a gentleman, he was 88 years old. His wife was in rehab, and she had had a stroke, and she was non-responsive, and they said, we're not going to pay for any kind of physical therapy or anything like that. You're too old, you should put her in a nursing home. And he was pretty adamant. He said, I'm going to take her home. And, and they recommended I come talk to him. Of course, him being a guy, he said, I can do this all myself. And she was bedridden and everything. And he said, no, you can't. And the family said, no, you can't.
Right.
So we brought her home, and this was somebody who they really were kind of like, wrap it up. I mean, she's not responsive. And here we are, 4 years later, she's actually dancing and
Wow.
speaking, and just as a couple really had a good quality of life. He actually just passed, which is really sad.
Aw.
So he passed before she did, which happens a lot with caregivers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he wouldn't have had that time had he not got
That's really
care,
sweet. That's nice.
and had somebody come home with him, and and they couldn't have appreciated that person
Right.
that much, and the ease it was on the family that lived far away to know that they were taken care of.
Yeah, it is. Being a caregiver, just having somebody, another set of hands, or especially when you're working, that pressure, I don't have to get home at this time, or maybe me and my husband can see a movie. Isn't that a novel idea?
Right.
It just is such a gift to the caregiver to have this in place.
The other part of it, it's no place like home. So in this
Yeah.
case, once she got home, she was very anxious in the facility and all that. Once she got home, she became like a different person. They put her back on physical therapy and all that,
That's great.
So
that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. So we have only about a minute left, but one last piece of advice. If you could talk to all the caregivers out there about this world of home health care, no pressure or anything, but what advice would you give to caregivers?
if you're taking care of somebody else, it's very important that you get assistance, because statistically the caregiver will pass before the person they're taking care of from the stress.
Yeah.
Because nobody realizes how stressful it is taking care of another individual. So in whatever way you can, I encourage somebody to get help and make sure that they take care of themselves and be a little bit selfish, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be there for that person.
Right,
So,
and it's not selfish, that's the thing. I think caregivers sometimes think it's selfish, but it's a gift to because even just another person being with the person that you're caring for, just have another person to talk to or see or just get a break, it's so important. It
Right.
just really is so important.
Yeah.
And these are trained, lovely people.
Yeah. So as I say, I tell people you have to do something in order to make sure that you're alleviating your stress.
Right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you.
We could go on for hours. So thank you so much for tuning into Caregivers First today. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some helpful tips from Jim and about the world of in-home care. And now it's your turn. I'd love to hear from you and what's on your mind. Please call SCAN at 732-542-1326 or email us. The email will be on the screen. And send us your show ideas and feedback. And have a wonderful day.